In chemistry, it's important to not only be able to predict the chemical formula from a name, but to be able to go the other direction. I think this sometimes is what students struggle with the most, is how do I name these compounds if I'm given the chemical formula? So let's go back the other way than we have done in previous videos. So to start with, let's look at this first compound. The very first thing you want to do is figure out whether it is ionic or covalent. So find lithium on your periodic table and find sulfur. Now with lithium, it is going to be our cation. Sulfur is going to be our anion. They're on opposite sides of that periodic table. So since that's the case, it is an ionic compound, which means we do not use our prefixes, those mono, di, tetra, etc. Okay? We're just going to name the first compound, so lithium and sulfide. Because remember, it is sulfur, but you have to put that IDE on the end. All right. Now I also need to think about, is this a type 1 or a type 2? It is type 1 because lithium is over there and it's in group 2. Okay, it's not a transition metal. It only has one possible charge. Does the charges make sense based on the formula? Let's see. Lithium would be +1, sulfur would be 2-. If we cross those charges, we are going to end up with that lithium with the 2 subscripts, sulfur without 1. All right, so lithium sulfide. I don't know why I put sulfuride. Okay, so you would want to cross out that ending, and it should be sulfide. Lithium sulfide. Combine that sulfur with the IDE ending to give you sulfide. All right, let's do the next one. Copper and oxygen together. What do we have here? Is it covalent or ionic? First question you always ask. So you should have noted that this is in fact ionic. But the next thing to notice is that copper is in the transition metals. So since it's a transition metal, it's probably going to be type 2. So that means we have to name it slightly different. Remember those Roman numerals? We need to be able to do that. So in order to put the charge of copper in a Roman numeral, we need to be able to figure out what is the charge of copper. Same way we do it before with the charges. So copper, we need to figure out what its charge is. And oxygen, we know its charge. Our anions, we always know its charge. So you look at your periodic table and you find out the oxygen is 2-. So if this is 1 to 1, we know oxygen is 2-. What should copper be then? If it's +1, those aren't going to balance out because then the 2 and the 1 would carry down. But if instead we have 2 plus, now they're balanced. So if you bring these charges down, it's going to say Cu2O2, which is not the same as this. But wait, it kind of is, because you always reduce those chemical formulas to the lowest common multiple. So 2 and 2 are both divisible by 2, so you reduce that down to end up with copper oxide. But whenever we're naming this copper, we always put the Roman numeral after the cation, and that Roman numeral correlates with the charge of the cation. And then you write the anion's name, making sure you end it with "ide." So copper to oxide. Type 1, type 2. All right, for our last one, I'm sure you can guess that because it's type 1, type 2, this is probably going to be a covalent compound, but you always need to ask that question just to make sure. So go find carbon on your periodic table and go find sulfur, and you'll notice they're both above the stair-step line. So they're both non-metals. If they are non-metals, then these prefixes apply, and this is a covalent compound. So in naming this, you just name it with the prefixes. So carbon, monocarbon, but we don't put mono for the first compound. So carbon, and then sulfur, but it's 2 of them. So sulfur, carbon, disulfide. And there we have our names. And so you need to make sure that you can go back and forth between give the chemical formula, give me the name. If you're given the name, give me the chemical formula. And how you do that is you first and foremost, I'll repeat this over and over again, figure out whether it's covalent or ionic. If it's ionic, figure out then if it's type 1 or type 2. That will save you a world of hurt and will make it so you get all of these points right on the exam and going forward in chemistry. Because this is not going away. You have to know how to name things. In future exams, I'm not going to say copper 2 oxide. I'll say copper 2 oxide, but I'm not going to tell you what the formula is. You have to be able to figure out what the formula is going into the whole problem. If you can't get step 1, which is naming, then you can't do chemistry because you don't even know what stuff called. It's like trying to learn Spanish without understanding how all of the letters within the Spanish alphabet really function.